Good morning, I'm Dave Christie with your LaRouche Organization Daily Update for Tuesday, December 16th. I'm going to start with the lead of today's Executive Intelligence Review Daily Alert, which you should all be subscribers to, entitled, "There is no partial solution. We must and can change the entire system." And it starts with a quote from Helga Zepp-LaRouche from this weekend's very successful conference with youth activists and thinkers from around the world, where she says, "NATO has definitely outlived its legitimacy. We must urgently replace it with a new security and development architecture, which this time must take into account the security and development interests of every single country on the planet." I think that is absolutely the only way out of the crisis. Now, the lead goes on to state that, we have a simultaneous and opposite trajectories in the world, which underscores what Helga just said. On the one hand, we see a world of the global majority that is moving to consolidate relationships of cooperation, mutual respect, and win-win agreements for development. And on the other hand, a completely hysterical freakout from an increasingly irrelevant yet nuclear-armed elite class that would do anything to prevent peace in Ukraine or to stir up a new conflict somewhere else on the globe. So I think that situates where we're at. Now, I want to just start with referring back to this somewhat anomalous report that we had mentioned in Defense One and I believe Politico as well, which talked about this alternative version of the national security strategy, raising the idea of the core five, that is the C5 comprising the United States, China, Russia, India, and Japan. That obviously isn't far off of Mr. LaRouche's four powers of the core of the BRICS, Russia, India, China, and the United States, which he cited as the required power to bring down the British Empire, the integrated cartel system out of the City of London and its satellites in Wall Street and the European capitals. So again, we don't know if this report from Defense One is actually real. In other words, actual plans by the Trump administration. It could be an attempt by the Trump administration leaking this to the media in a way to put pressure on the European capitals, basically saying that, you guys are becoming irrelevant given your intransigence on anything decent in the world. It also very well could be a Psy-war effort by the British in other words, a leak to the media, to cut this idea off at the pass, given that undoubtedly there are those within the United States that know that if we continue to serve the special relationship, the UK-US special relationship, we will be the cockboat to the British man of war, as John Quincy Adams said, or the brawn for the British brains of the global war dynamic. Now, so again, we don't know whether this C5 proposal is real or not. However, there is ongoing freakout around this national security strategy, and I'll refer to what Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, said over the weekend to an event for the CSU, where he said a fundamental change in Europeans have to prepare for what he called a fundamental change in the transatlantic relationship. The decades of Pax Americana are largely over for us in Europe and for us in Germany as well. It no longer exists in the way we knew it. Americans are now firmly pursuing their own interests. So that's from Merz of Germany. And of course, we had these hysteria, as you probably have heard, from Mark Rutte, the CEO of NATO, saying that we have to fight World War III like our grandparents did. There's not going to be a war with, an attrition warfare in the continental Europe. It's going to be nuclear weapons used. So anyway, I think that probably more likely the idea of a war, as Rutte defines it, as, preparing to fight that, would look more like hybrid warfare. I'll refer to what Helga has repeatedly highlighted, and which she includes in her withdraw from NATO. New national security strategy requires new security architecture. That's her statement. But in that statement, she refers to NATO's promotional video entitled From Foresight to Warfight, which states, war will always remain an essential human endeavor. Manipulating the opponent's emotions and understanding will be just as important as denying access to our spaces. The human mind will be a battle space in its own right. So that's from NATO, and I think the new head of MI6, Blaise Metroelli, according to a preview of her first public speech that was released by the British government, she has said that the export of chaos is a feature, not a bug, in the Russian approach to international engagement, and we should be ready for this to continue until Putin is forced to change his calculus. And she cites, of course, cyber operations, information warfare, covert sabotage. She went on to say that the front line is everywhere and that the UK faces a new age of uncertainty. So that's from Blaise Metroelli, I think, indicating that MI6 would certainly like to play their games around the strategy of tension, as they have long been known to do. Now, on that situation, I will refer to this that what happened on the beach in Australia on the Hanukkah celebration there. The response by Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, I think indicates how these events can be used. He said that the intelligence services of Australia warned about a range of threats, be it anti-Semitism, the rise of right-wing extremist groups as well, and we continue to work closely with our security agencies to deal with this. Now, so, this is in line with the kind of dark Brandon approach of Joe Biden, where we're going to run the censorship regimes and so on. So I think we could expect these kind of responses to this sort of strategy of tension approach. It should be noted that there was kind of an equal opportunity, strategy of tension concerning a Muslim cemetery that was vandalized in Sydney, again in Australia, vandalized with butchered pig heads. So anyway, this is speculative in terms of what's behind all of this, but certainly British intelligence will take its cue to exacerbate these sort of tensions, as did Bibi Netanyahu and Herzog out of Israel, who used this event in Australia to, say that the victim's blood is on the government's hands, and strangely went on to threaten Iran, that somehow they're behind this. So I think we could expect, Harley Schlanger reported that some of his contacts in Iran are warning that this could be used as the pretext for a sort of surprise attack on Iran, sort of the long-standing mission of Netanyahu and his gang inside of Israel. So in that context, the Iranian and Russian foreign ministers have met in Moscow. Not saying it's around that per se, but they did discuss the comprehensive strategic partnership agreement, that it has been signed and has entered into force. So relations between Iran and Russia are now entering a new phase of development. That is, Iran's ambassador to Russia cited that. So now I think in general we should just look at the global war dynamic, the kind of strategy of tension and the use of that for geopolitical reasons, or using it geopolitically. That there is otherwise a flurry of diplomatic activity that we see on behalf of the BRICS nations. We just had Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's trip ending yesterday to Southwest Asia. He visited the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. I won't detail what was said about that, but one can assume it's the kind of development perspective that China has been pursuing globally, but certainly in this region. India's Prime Minister Modi has paid a state visit to Jordan and will be on to Ethiopia. So you can see this kind of approach that's coming from the BRICS nations. Now, otherwise, I think just to cover it lastly is on the situation in Ukraine, where we have this sort of flurry of diplomatic activity, discussions that somehow by the year's end there will be some diplomatic agreement, a ceasefire reached. According to the Wall Street Journal, they're saying that U.S. negotiators appeared unwilling to compromise with the Ukrainian counterparts over the peace roadmap that was proposed by Trump. That it's turned into a tug of war, according to the Wall Street Journal. Washington's pushing for a quick de-escalation, getting it ended by the end of the year, whereas the main bone of contention on Ukraine's side is on the territorial concessions. So, again, this is at least a report by the Wall Street Journal. From the Russian senior diplomat, who is Sergei Ryabkov, the deputy foreign minister, he said that my assumption would be, though, that the Ukrainian authorities, heavily backed by some European capitals, European leaders, anticipate a deep and a very wrong modification of the initial peace plan produced by the U.S. side, which was discussed when Steve Witkoff was here in Moscow last. So we could expect that, the Ukrainians and the Europeans, the British allied forces, are going to play their games around this and work to sabotage this. Whereas Trump has made it clear, which is increasingly clear, that they've already lost the territory. To be honest, I mean the territory is lost, in reference to the negotiations around ceding territory. I think it should just be clear, either through negotiations or through military efforts, Russia will get its, its stated objectives on the issue of the 4 regions, which are already incorporated into Russian territory as per their constitution. So this is all just games being played to sabotage things and keep the war dynamic, according to Mark Rutte and according to Blaise Metroelli of MI6. And that's what this is all about. So I think at this point, we should come back to what Helga has been increasingly clear on. Dissolve NATO, move to a new international security and development architecture. There's no piecemeal approach that's going to work. Otherwise, we will be playing British whack-a-mole in some other theaters, whether that's Iran, whether that's Venezuela, whether that's the other theaters of this kind of war. And so that is what we intend to do at the LaRouche organization. So stay tuned for your daily updates.